Robinson, who's in the slot. Look in that direction on a slant. Huge hit. Ball picked off. The Volunteers of the Carib make an interception. Jawan Mitchell. They call him Juju.
Discrepancy. Schuster, they were going to take a shot, but he's hit by Nelson. And Nebraska has picked up the football. Their first takeaway of the game.
Wells way down the field. It is into coverage. It is intercepted. It is over. Lamarian James has sealed the victory for Old Dominion. And fittingly, it comes on a takeaway.
Welcome back to Devy IDP Grind. I'm Hollywood. I'm joined by my co-host Justice. What's going on, bud?
Oh, not much, man. Just another Tuesday night, right? We get to talk college IDPs. That's always a good night.
Yeah. I always think, of course now, I always think Tuesday night action when I think of Tuesday nights.
Oh, yeah. November.
Yeah. You're deep into the heart of college football season when Tuesday night action comes around.
Oh, yeah, like you're getting football you're getting football every night of the week at that point, right? Between NFL and college.
Yeah, and isn't there – oh, gosh, help me. Isn't there a stretch where there's actually a football game every single college, maybe, every single night for like –
I don't think it's college. I think it's a combination of NFL.
Maybe that's what
because of Monday and Sunday, right? It's got to be NFL. So, but yeah, you're right. It's like, I don't know, 28, 30 days of a football game, college or NFL, an FBS college or NFL every night or every day.
It's fabulous.
It's
the time if you're not going to sleep and watch football, that's the time.
It is fabulous, but then the sad part is like the end is near. It's like really kind of the last month of the regular season, right? So,
right. So we're back this week. We were kind of before we get started here, we were kind of chatting about Georgia. Seems like they've turned into Thug City down there in Athens.
There's definitely some issues that they need to address, right? I assume it's like a culture thing, right? I mean, the fact that they saw one of their teammates like recently die for actions similar to things they're doing. Not that he was like, I'm not saying he was drunk or whatever, but just kind of irresponsible behavior, I guess is the best way to say it. And they're still doing these things, right? That really shocks me, I guess, right? You would think that would have served as a wake-up call for individuals to look at themselves and say, hey, I got to do better.
Yeah. Didn't somebody get arrested for speeding or something like that right here recently?
Oh yeah, there's been like, I don't know, man, like 3 or 4 guys, I feel like, since that whole incident happened, where things have come out for drinking and speeding and, just being irresponsible.
Yeah, it's definitely a mess. And we were talking about the most recent was this the wide receiver Marcus
Rosemy Jack Saint.
Yeah, Jack Saint. So he was arrested on, guess what? Reckless driving charge. So I know kids, young people like to get out and have fun. They live dangerously at times and do stupid things. But
I think the one before was Denylon Morissette, which is a receiver, and I want to say I think he was like underage drinking or something like that.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, but I feel like that's what it was.
I just feel like with the whole Jalen Carter thing, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
they would crack down just a little bit and say, "Hey guys, we need to dial this back. Be more cognizant of what's going on around us, what we're doing."
Well,
set,
you
set
would
the
think
better example.
you think the situation that happened would have like caused them to kind of have a moment of self-reflection and be like, hey, I got to do better, or I can't do this, right? I could die.
Right. No, I'm with you. But yeah, clearly there's something going on down there. Which you say that about any program when things start going awry. That that's kind of the stuff you hear. But hopefully they can. Those kids will learn their lesson and straighten up a little bit. I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
I kind of feel like at this point there's like we're past like there's enough smoke. There's definitely like some fire going on.
Yes. Oh yeah. You see the small flame starting to flicker now.
Right. Like it's definitely on fire at this point in some respects. It's not just smoke anymore.
Exactly. So we don't have a whole lot of news and notes. It's kind of a dead period, really. But you found something interesting for us. And this is, some of y'all may follow him on Twitter. It's at Big Game Boomer. And he has released his top 50 linebackers and top 50 edge for the upcoming 2023 season. When you were kind of looking at this list, you're putting it up now as we speak for those of you watching. We've got the linebacker list up. Excuse me. We were talking about interesting list, and the more I look at it, the more interesting it kind of gets for me a little bit. This is not fantasy based. Let's just say that, because
that's the thing. Like when I first saw this list, like I certainly didn't expect it to be fantasy based, right? But
right, because that's not something you find everywhere. So yeah, I get it.
But I have a hard time kind of understanding what the basis for it is, right? It's not production based. It's not NFL potential based. It's not high draft capital based. Like, I really don't know. I have zero clue what it's based on.
Yeah, I mean, you, like I said, you were kind of looking down the list, and some of the names we expected to be at the top are not there. Despite whether we were looking at it from a fantasy or an NFL, there was some names they're not there at the top. So
no,
and there were a few names just missing altogether off the list. So
yeah, the top 5 are Harold Perkins Jr. from LSU, Peyton Wilson, NC State, Tommy Eichenberg, Georgia, and Jason Henderson, ODU. And
those first 5 is not what I expected, right?
Like, I can see Perkins being there. I can see Eichenberg being there. I can see Henderson being there. Wilson and Jamon Dumas-Johnson, they don't belong there. In my opinion.
No, they sure don't. And he's even got Small Munden Jr. on there too from Georgia, but he's got him at 34. I could kind of see that.
It should be swapped. I can see. I'd like it better if it was swapped.
Yeah, I would like it better swapped, but I think Jason Dumas-Johnson should be down there with him because they're taking over for studs. You know what I mean? Nakobe Dean's gone, and now you've got help me. Nolan Smith and those guys are gone linebackers. So I kind of get it that he's kind of, I guess, projecting with those guys a little bit.
Well,
but
Dumas-Johnson was a starter. Yeah, Jamon Dumas-Johnson was a starter last year. So, and then you got guys like Abdul Carter, 16. Danny Stutzman, 30th.
Yeah, Nick Jackson, 17. I think that's a little low. The one that really stood out to me right away was Barrett Carter Jr., for Clemson.
Yeah.
Right? He's got him
Jackson
down there
Mitchell.
at 30. Yeah, 36 and 37. So, and for me, those are two that are in my top 5 overall.
Like
You
if
know,
I was, so let's do an exercise. So if I was to make
See,
my own
here's
top
the-
5, it would be production based,
right?
and I would have Jason Henderson, Sean Dolak, Jackson Mitchell, Jalen Ford, and Cedric Gray.
Right. I would agree with that. Now, here's the thing, and I'm maybe not the same order as you, but I agree. That's your upper tier, upper echelon. And you said a name that's kind of, for me, is an example of how off whack this is as far as I can't understand. So you had Sean Dolak, the linebacker from Buffalo, in your top 6 or 7 there. He's got him at number 8. I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But then you're gonna have him at 8, but you're gonna turn around and drop Jackson Mitchell to 36.
Right. Yeah.
Barrett
To
Carter to
36.
37. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that there's no rhyme or reason to this list.
Yeah, I don't get it. And the weird thing is he's only got one Oklahoma player, so I can't even use the boomer, big game boomer against him. And
No,
that's
he's got 3
Stutzman.
Michigan guys, 3 Michigan
Yeah,
guys in the top 50, which seems insane to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, he's got, you named the first 5 there: Perkins, Wilson, Eichenberg, which I think is a little high for me. Dumas Johnson is a little high for me at 4. Then he's got Jason Henderson. Okay, I got you. Trotter at 6, Jeremiah Trotter at 6, Cal Halliday at 7, Dolak at 8, Ford at 9, and then Chad Bailey at 10. I think that's really high for Bailey.
That's super high for Bailey, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's probably not even in my top 50.
I don't think he's in my top 50 either. And to be honest, I don't even know if he's in my top 100, to be honest with you. I'd have to go back and look at my rankings.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any rankings, but I have a hard time believing Chad Bailey would be in my top 50 linebackers.
And if he is, you're for life.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, his list, if you look at some of it, it's not off. I mean, too far off, right?
Yeah,
He's got grade 11.
Just seems so random.
Yeah, he's got Easton Gibbs, Wyoming, right? Everybody kind of knows who that linebacker is. He's got him at 15. I'm okay with that. I'm not hating it, not disliking it, but to have some of these other guys way down here at the bottom.
Yeah, Abdul Carter, 16. I can dig that. But then
Yeah.
Michael Barrett, 20th from Michigan.
Yeah,
Gabe Jackus, 18th from Illinois. Like,
and he's got Ben Bywater at 29 from BYU, and I'd made the joke he's been playing for 15 years now, and not that he's a bad linebacker. He's actually decent fantasy purchase, really good for BYU, but he's not better than Mitchell. He's not better than Carter. He's not better than even a Clayton Cole from Ball State. He's not better than him. Power Eccles. You can go on and on.
Well,
you even mentioned one. Who's the guy you left off that you mentioned?
Darren Anders from Bowling Green.
Yes. Yeah.
But here's something else I just noticed. He's from Notre Dame. He's got Jack Kaiser. He doesn't have what's his name? Oh my God. Oh. His brother plays baseball for him. I can't think of his name. I own him. I own him in a lot of leagues. I'm gonna have to look this up real quick.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up my sheet because I've got him graded on my sheet somewhere. Let's see. Oh, Leighton Jordan's another one we talked about.
Leighton Jordan from Temple, yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one that wasn't on the list. Fantrax is going really slow.
Shea Sumino from Iowa or from Wyoming. The other linebacker's not on there.
JD Bertrand.
Yes. So yeah, it's he's got a lot that you like, but he's got a lot at the same time. It's just a head scratcher. You're like, if you have a player there, how do you have player B this far off, right? Because
Right. Bryce Houston from Ohio. Like, seriously? Yeah. That guy's probably not in my top 100.
yeah, I mean, I can find a bunch of linebackers, even on the inside, right? Like C.J. Hicks from Ohio State, I would put up there. The outside linebacker you wanted to talk about Notre Dame, Jalen Sneed. I guess he's more of a edge guy, but man, there's so many linebackers in college. I just don't understand the thinking there.
Well, I think I just thought of something, and maybe this is the whole purpose of these lists, because that's all he does is like lists, right? Is he does these so random, and you know why? To create controversy or talk about it, right? Create interaction. Like he's creating his own interaction.
Yeah, kind of like clickbait in a way.
Yeah,
A little bit. Interesting. Maybe we should try to reach out to him one day and have him on and kind of have him explain these lists. I think that would be fun to hear.
Absolutely.
To hear his thought of it. But yeah, I'm sitting here looking at my list and I'm like, oh my God, I've got so many.
I'm gonna switch it over to the defensive ends now. So here's his defensive end list.
Oh. And I really didn't think. Let me look at this again before I stick my foot in my mouth. I didn't think the defensive ends was as bad.
Well, number 4, right? Like, what the world?
Well, the one issue I have is he has Jared Verse at number 3.
Well, Jared Verse is number 1. Chop Robinson's number 2. Like, this list is just as bad, man.
Yeah. Now, for those not
Braylon Trice isn't even on the list. Braylon Trice from Washington is not even on the list. That is insanity.
Yes, it is. So his
I'm
top
pretty sure
5 are JT Tui Malalu, Jerzon Newton, Illinois. No. Jared Verse, Florida State, Keith Randolph Jr., Illinois, and Joe Evans of Iowa. So he's got 2 Illinois players in the top 4.
Like Newton, okay, but I don't think Newton's a defensive end. I think he's a D tackle at the next level. But
and so is Randolph going to be a bigger interior guy.
But like he's got, I'm pretty sure Praise Amawule from UTEP. I'm pretty sure that dude's graduated, isn't he? I feel like he has. I could be wrong, but
now that I'm not sure on. But again, he's got Rondell Bothroyd from Wake Forest, who's at his Sooners now, and he's got him at 30.
Hey, he's got Ethan Downs ahead of him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got him at 21. He doesn't have Jack Sawyer on there that I'm seeing, unless I'm overlooking it.
No.
But
the fact that he doesn't have Braylon Trice from Washington on here, that dude's like a top 5 edge. Yeah, he doesn't have the kid from Cal either, Latu.
No, he sure doesn't.
Like this is terrible list. This is worse. This list is worse than the linebackers.
You know, even I can't mess this up that bad.
This list is worse, bro. Like this list is definitely worse than the linebackers. I mean, so just looking from
he has a certain reasoning on this, but I can't see it in any form or fashion. I just do not know what it is.
Yeah. Is Owen Porter on there from Marshall? Yeah, he's got them at 12.
12, yeah. I mean, he's got some players that I like. Deontay Craig from Iowa, 25. That Joe Evans from Iowa. I like both of those guys, right? But Joe Evans
that's way too high. It's way too high.
Yeah, he's not the 5th best edge in the country. I'm trying to look. Ron Stone, that's a name you've heard for a while at Washington State. Man, I just don't. This may be worse than the linebacker list, actually.
It is. I mean, the fact he doesn't have Trice and Latu on there, that's bad. That's really bad. Because those guys are probably like, Okay, if you want to argue top 5, but they're definitely like in a top 10, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
to
agree with
me,
you on that.
Verse is number 1 and Chop Robinson's number 2. But
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't even have Jack Sawyer on there, which, man, you look at it, he really doesn't have a lot of SEC guys on there.
no, he doesn't.
At all.
No.
Mikael Williams at 9 from Georgia.
I like that one. I like that one.
Savion Jones, LSU at 23. Tim Smith.
Oh,
Alabama
you know who's not?
35.
You know who's not on this? You know who's not on this list?
I know who you're talking about.
Dallas Turner.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not an end, but he's an edge, and he seems to be mixing them up here. So, but maybe he's going to come out with an edge list, and he's on the edge list. I don't know. And if that's the case, Latu's probably on the edge list, not here.
Maybe that's because.
But Braylon Trice is a defensive end. He should be on this list.
Right. Doesn't have Colin Oliver, Josiah Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, Stewart. Yeah, Stewart should definitely be here. Oliver should be here.
Trying to look at my list at some other players that I have. There's Mikael Williams. Where did he have Williams?
He's got Williams number 9.
Yeah, so I've got him on my big board. I've got him 50 overall. I was trying to look and see what other defensive ends I have here that.
From a production standpoint, Jalen Allen and Memphis should be higher from a production standpoint. And
maybe, like you said, he's got an edge thing because he doesn't have the Murphy brothers from UCLA anywhere either, Gabriel and Grayson.
No, but see, those guys I would classify from a college standpoint. They're ends. They're labeled as defensive ends.
Yeah,
but
this list is kind of crazy.
I mean, well, and isn't Tim Smith a defensive tackle for Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
So
now he may kick out and play a little towards the end.
He's a bigger dude though.
Yeah, he's a big guy. Man, I'd really like to know his.
Yeah, this list is bad, man. This list is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it earlier, but I didn't realize it was worse than the other one, and I think it is. I really did.
It's definitely worse. It's way worse than the other linebackers.
Wow, I'm just kind of at a loss here. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh wow. That's to each their own, though. I mean, I'm not hating him for putting out a list and putting his name on it. And, at least he's putting his name to it and saying, this is what I think, right? You got to give him that. Because a lot of people will just throw stuff out there and not tie their name to it or whatever.
Well, he tied his name to it, right? But you don't, I mean, if Big Game Boomer walked by you in a store, you wouldn't know who he was, right?
No, and I'm guessing if I'm Big Game Boomer, I'm probably banking on that from the looks of these rankings. Oh, I shouldn't laugh because some people probably think my rankings are way off. But, oof, man, those are rough. Now I want to see what the rest of it is. Maybe he'll have some more for us.
It seems like he's releasing one a day. I think yesterday was the defensive ends, today was the linebackers. So we should get another group tomorrow.
Awesome! I can't wait for next week so we can discuss that. Hope it's like safeties and linebackers is the next two.
It could be edges maybe, and that's where we'll see.
Yeah, it could be, and maybe some of the names we mentioned here are on that edge list. But I mean, yeah, you're reaching when you have Jalen Allen of Memphis on your list. You're kind of reaching a little bit, I think.
I mean, but Allen was at least productive.
True that.
From a production standpoint. So, I mean, Allen's definitely not the worst name on this list.
No, and he's got Xavier Thomas, Clemson at 17. If he's kind of a bigger guy too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it's interesting. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. It's the weird thing is, like, I feel like he should have called this defensive line, right? Because it feels like he has ends and tackles mixed in.
Yeah, he's got a mix of guys here. So,
Oh, another guy that's not on here is David Bailey, Stanford.
oh yeah, he's not on there. Yeah,
But again,
Wow.
he could be on an edge list, but
could be.
it just seems, yeah, like if that's the case, Michael Williams should be on the edge list, right? You know, Chop Robinson should be on the edge list.
Yeah, I'm the two things that glare at me, well, three if you count the Turner thing that we talked about, but having two Illinois guys in the top four.
Yeah, and
And
neither
Joe
one of them,
Evans at 5.
neither one of them are probably ends. They're D tackles.
Right, and then you got Joe Evans at 5. I'm just like, I'm probably as big a Joe Evans fans as anybody, but he's not the 5th best in the country.
And yeah, and Jared Verse not being number 1, that's like, I don't know, that's bad.
And then not having Turner on there.
Yeah. It's a
That's,
question for you. If Jared Verse had come out in this year's draft class, where would you have ranked him? Where would you have put him?
I would have had him. That's. I guess his. Overall end or however you edge. I thought he was already top 2. I had him behind Will Anderson. So
Yeah, I probably had him 3rd behind Wilson, but I definitely think that was a close call, right?
right, and maybe it was maybe he had the right people in his ear. We kind of say maybe the wrong people's in your ear a lot of times. Maybe he had the right person in his ear saying, "Look, you're probably a top 5 in the class at that position, but you've only had one big year against solid competition. It's a deep class. Why don't you come back next year for one more year and come out next year where you're the clear-cut favorite?" So, I mean, if that's what somebody was telling him, I could understand that.
Yeah, but I find it hard. I have a hard time believing he wouldn't have went in the 1st round had he come out.
Yeah. Let's see. Will Anderson went, 3?
Yeah.
Tyree Wilson went, 7 to Las Vegas? A lot of people
was Van Ness the next, like at 13 or 14, something like that.
Right, but a lot of people, if you want to put this into context a little bit, a lot of people, including myself, had Miles Murphy right up in that top group, right? And he went kind of later in the 29, 30.
He went to Cincinnati, so like it had to be later 20s.
Yeah, it was 29, 30, somewhere in that range, I think. So I want to say yes.
Well, and Felix went in the last pick, so I feel really confident saying that he would have went in the 1st round.
Yeah, he would have definitely went 1st round, and he probably goes depending on how they view him, right? How teams look at him and what they think of the production and whatever. I think he goes between Anderson and probably Van Ness. That's where his range. I think he goes. As soon as Anderson come off the board, the next pass rusher on that group for me would have been Verse. So whether that's 7 to Vegas or somebody moves up to get him, I think he's the second one off the board. I think he was easily a top 10 pick, easy.
Yeah.
But people see, I mean, we watch every year, and players are just falling and dropping, or they're taking way higher than what we expect. So, I mean, there's no perfect science to it. It's just how you perceive the player, right? How you view them, how they fit your system, all that good stuff. So, yeah. But interesting here on these now. I can't wait to see the others. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Before we get to our 5-star topic, we want to thank Trophy Smack for donating hardware to our listener leagues. You've seen the championship rings, heavy rings, nicely built, quality made, and they've been a big supporter of ours the last few years as they've donated the rings for our listener league champions. So we thank them for that. Action 24/7, if you're into the gambling side, they've been a sponsor of us too. Locally owned gambling site for Tennesseans by Tennesseans. They've got the odds just like the big boys. They've kind of redone their website the last week or so. So I know the solid white wasn't aesthetically pleasing to the eyes a little bit. So they've changed it. They've got a darker blue to it. They still have the white, but they have the darker blue, which kind of pops off. So go check them out. Like I said, they got everything: baseball, basketball, football, hockey, ping pong, darts, you name it, cricket, racing, they've got it. So I can't wait till football season starts because I plan on being over there quite a bit. Our 5-star topic, and this was your idea, you wanted to talk about draft strategy.
Yeah, so I
I'll
actually
let you lead here.
this is kind of draft season, right? I mean, I feel like starting around now through August kind of is draft season, and so I feel like it's a good topic to give people some thoughts and ideas about our own personal strategies, maybe strategies that they can employ for their drafts, whether they're CFF or C2C. And I actually literally got a question over the weekend asking this exact what we're going to talk about, right? And I said, hey, instead of me answering your question, like just listen to our next podcast, because that's going to be that's the topic of discussion, right? It's timely. It's a guy. It's his one of his first ventures into IDP, right? On the college side, and so he didn't really know where to start. So, I said, well, hey, that's a great question and timely because we're gonna discuss it on our next podcast.
Yeah, and I feel like it can be a little overwhelming. IDP,
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
I mean, even for some of the more knowledgeable guys like you and Chop and myself,
because there's no information out there, right? You got to find it yourself.
Right. Yeah, so you're sort of digging it up on your own and all this. And I've just been playing 3-4 years now, maybe 5. Brett, my memory's bad. Maybe 5. And I'm still kind of learning it a little bit, right? But
Absolutely.
The very first year, I jumped out with one of Chop's leagues, and he likes to do the auctions. So I had no idea my first auction with him. I'd played some draft IDP the first few years. And then a couple years ago when he had an opening, I jumped in his auction, and it was the year that Corey Foreman came out. And I kind of asked around and dug around to try to find values, and they just, like you said, there wasn't a whole lot of information. So me trying to do this and put it out there for y'all, I was like, okay, Corey Foreman, #1 player in the country. Let's see what it'll take to get him, right? And he went for a ton, and it wasn't me. They were other people bidding me up, and
right.
I even let it set for a little while to say, hey, I'm backing off to see, and people just kept bidding on him. And I think it was, I can't remember, 175 or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's insane
That is rich.
for a defensive
That's
player.
rich.
And so, yeah.
You spend that kind of money, that dude better be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, and he better be starting right away in college too, right? I mean,
yeah.
And he's not. I mean, he started, but he's not been what I paid for and not what everybody thought until now, right? So,
right.
and
when I say spend that kind of money, right, like people go say, oh, well, we spend way more for offense and they're not first-round picks. Yeah, but you're always going to spend more for offense. That's just the nature of the beast, right? If I'm spending that much money on a defensive player, he better be a first-round draft pick.
Right. And, you've heard us talk about for the past year, like a player like Caleb Downs, right? The safety that come out of Georgia has now he's on not committed. He's enrolled, if I could talk. He's enrolled at Alabama now. Looks like he could maybe start some as a freshman. But even
he'll start, yeah.
I think he will too. Yeah. But he went for right at $100.
Right at $100.
Yeah, so
yeah.
And I think if you believe in a defensive player, and maybe you feel a little different. If you really believe in a defensive player, then I think $100. I think that's pretty close to the max.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'll get him for that, but in my assessment, I think $100 is about where I would want to pay the most. I think
so. Yeah, I would agree with you there, because I paid I don't know, like 85 for Chop Robinson,
right.
in one of the leagues that we just had. He was somehow a free agent, and so yeah, I mean, but I believe he's a first-round draft pick, so I'm going to spend that money.
Right.
But the difference to me is Chop Robinson's proven it, right? He's been out there and done it. Caleb Downs hadn't stepped foot yet. Well, I mean, other than spring practice, right? He hasn't stepped foot on a game.
Which didn't help his value at all, right? Having that big spring game balling out.
Yeah. But
me and you kind of talked about it with Peter Woods too, right? We both love him. And he got up there, what, $80, I think?
I do love Peter Woods, but I would, if I was a Peter Woods lover, it better be a defensive tackle required league.
Yes,
because I am not spending the money that was going to take to get him in a league that's generic defensive line, because there's no question in my mind he will be a defensive tackle he's going to be a defensive tackle at Clemson. He's going to be a defensive tackle at the next level.
Yep.
I mean,
I
the dude went up 30 pounds from his 24/7 profile to his Clemson official roster size. So he's 300 pounds now. Like there aren't 300-pound defensive ends.
No, not many. I mean, you may see some that kick out and play there occasionally to win matchups or whatever, but there's not very many that play at 300 pounds on the edge like that.
And you saw the spring game. He played in the interior. That's where he's going to play.
Yeah, yes, he did.
And I expect he'll start.
Yeah, I think he will too. I mean, they're kind of like Alabama with safeties, Clemson with their defensive line, right? They churn them in and out a lot, so I think the opportunity is there for him to start, and I think he's good enough that he will start probably over what they've got. So, my
Peter Woods player profile just dropped today at Campus to Canton, so give that a read.
Ooh,
I did Caleb Downs last week.
I'm gonna have to go over and see what you're writing up about my boys here. Yeah. Definitely go over to Campus to Canton and check out Justice's work there. He does a great job with that stuff. So you've got understanding some of the league basics. I guess that's where we are started off with here.
Yep.
Does your league manually score IDP on the college side, or do you just use whatever Fantrax does? And I guess newbies, they're kind of like, what? what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, what does that
for
mean?
us
But
old heads.
this is the single most important question you need to know before you ever
Yes.
enter a draft with IDP. You have to know the answer to this question.
Yeah, because what do we always say on the NFL side or most leagues? Know your league scoring, right? Which is the most important thing. But I think this is the one. This is the one thing that'll trump that is if it's manually scored or if you're just going by what Fantrax says. And go ahead and elaborate on what we're talking about here so they'll know.
So last season, Fantrax, in their infinite wisdom, decided to not score tackles anymore for defensive players. Well, not scoring tackles for defensive players would be the same as saying, hey, passing yards don't count for quarterbacks or rushing yards don't count for running backs, right? It's just like insane. But nonetheless, Fantrax, doesn't score tackles. And their reason for not doing it was they said that their stat provider could not provide it or it wasn't reliable. Well, that's absolutely true. I will say that. The year before, their stat provider was bad at tackles. But I'm going to tell you what else. They were bad at everything, and they're still bad at everything, right? It's not just tackles. It's other stats, right? P5 players' stats are missing, or they're incorrect. G5. Some P5 schools, like your Vanderbilts, their stats aren't right. Like, I mean, are Alabama stats pretty close? Yeah. Georgia? Yeah. But Old Dominion? Nope. If they're even there, right? They don't exist. And so if you're playing in a league that you're just going to do whatever Fantrax does, then in my opinion, if you're playing in a C2C league, then you absolutely play the defensive side like a Devy league, right? You don't care about Jason Henderson. You don't care about Sean Dolak, right? Because number one, those guys, the tackles aren't being scored anyway. I mean, they're smaller schools. Their stats aren't going to be worth the crap on Fantrax. And so, they're not going to get you points, right? And as much as we love those guys, and I love Jason Henderson, the dude's a freaking stud, but realistically, I don't know that he's any more than a, special teams kind of reserve linebacker on the NFL level, right? Just because of his size. But so you don't want to be spending draft capital on those guys. You're going to be loading up on guys from Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
The guys that are going to get drafted. So if your league is simply using Fantrax, you need to draft it like it's a Devy league and draft based on NFL potential only. Because the other thing too is, right, don't go overboard, because the defensive side of the league is not going to dictate who wins, right? Because the scoring is just going to be so minuscule, it's not going to move the needle. It's your offense is going to dictate who wins the league in that scenario.
Right. Yeah, and you're kind of not learning if you're just going by what Fantrax says, right? I mean, in a way, you're just kind of. I'll just give you an example. I'm pretty sure, like Jason Henderson, I believe he had 185 total tackles last year. Now, even though Fantrax doesn't score tackles, they do keep some tackles in there. They show them to you, but you can't use them for scoring purposes. I think they had him at 65 tackles, right? A third of what he actually had. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Which, two things. If you're paying for their premium, oof.
I don't know what. I mean, I've done it before in leagues, and I don't really know. I don't know what features you're using that are premium in your league.
Exactly,
most leagues,
especially if they're punting some of the basic ones. I mean, if they're punting the basic ones, you can only imagine maybe what they're doing with the premium. And then second, if you have a good commish like Chop yourself, because you help with Devy League, you help him with some of his leagues, commissions that really want it right and take the time to make sure it's right and put that effort in to make sure the scoring and all that kudos to you, because I don't know how you guys do it. It kind of equates me back to the old days when I used to first started playing fantasy, and I was out with the pad and paper and the USA Today and all that. That kind of brings me back to what you guys are doing, which is archaic in a way. But if you don't have a good commish, you really don't know what your players are doing per se. You're just kind of, for lack of a better term, Fantrax is just kind of half-assing it. And if you don't know any better, you're kind of half-assing it too, because you just don't realize it, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago, Chop and I were doing it by hand, and it took several hours. So last off season, I was like, we ain't doing this again, right? Like, I don't have several hours a day to score 4 and 5 leagues.
Yeah.
So I developed a tool I automated the process a whole lot. Now the thing is the stats aren't like live and they generally aren't available till 24 to 48 hours after the game, right? But to me, I'd rather wait that time and get accurate or more accurate, is probably a better way to say it, right? Of stats than to do nothing at all, because to me, if you're playing in an IDP league, right, you're a degenerate to begin with, and so you might as well score it, right? You're putting in the work and the effort to learn who these guys are, and so you really should score it properly, in my opinion. But
and staying with that, you said, what are your league scoring settings, right? You want to know those, because that's know your scoring inside and out, which is where we kind of backed up and went with how does your league score. But every fantasy league, know your scoring, right?
Most of our leagues are tackle heavy, because and that makes sense to me, because tackles are the most reliable and consistent statistic there is for a defensive player. And so it makes sense that the tackle guys are your higher scorers. I think the important point here about knowing your scoring settings is, are they the same scoring settings for every position, or do they vary by position, right? Because that dictates positional scarcity, positional values, all those kinds of things. For example, DWC, right?
Yeah.
Where we have the positional scoring, and I'm pretty sure in that league last year, and that's an NFL league, but I think of the top 10 defensive players, all defensive players, 5 of them were defensive tackles, right? And you would not, I think, a person that plays IDP, unless they play position-specific scoring leagues, they probably would never in a million years expect that the top 5 of the half of the top 10 were defensive tackles. So that's why you got to know your settings and your scoring settings.
Right. Which kind of ties into your next one, know your positional requirements for a starting lineup, right? Well, you're scoring, what's your league scoring? Do you have those premiums like tight end premium and stuff? So do you have like a defensive tackle premium? Do you have a cornerback premium? Well, knowing that scoring, you kind of have to know your league's positional requirements, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to know, are you playing defensive line, linebacker, defensive back, which we call generic or base leagues, or are you kind of crazy like most of us, which is position specific, where you have to have defensive tackles, defensive ends, corners, safeties. For me, that's just the leagues that I like the best, is those type of leagues. So you gotta, you're scoring in and out, but I think with IDP, you gotta know what type of position you have to know that scoring, because it changes, right? If you're playing in defensive line leagues, DL leagues, then you're not going to draft hardly any defensive tackles, because the edge just outscores them too much. You may have your, you may have your
Aaron Donalds and Christian Wilkins. There's exceptions to the rule, but
you're going to have
you're not drafting those guys.
Yeah. So, which takes a player that we just talked about. If you're playing in
Peter
that
Woods
type of a league,
out of the equation,
Peter Woods,
right?
he's gone, right? Yeah, exactly. That's so you got to know that even though he's a great player and probably going to do really well, is he really going to be an impact for you if you're playing just a defensive line basic position league? And I don't think he will. I mean, he may have a few games where he busts his out, but overall, you're probably staying away from.
Yeah, I mean, he's not gonna hurt you on the college side, right? Where it's gonna get you is the NFL side, and
exactly,
and of course the price you paid for that, right? So
yeah.
And then you talked about defensive line. The same can be said with generic defensive back, right? You're not going to really be rostering cornerbacks in a generic defensive back league unless there's some kind of cornerback premium, some kind of premium on passes defended or something like that, right? But most leagues that are generic defensive back, defensive line, they don't have position specific scoring, right? Or those kind of bonuses. So you're not going to be drafting and rostering cornerbacks. You're going to be looking for the safeties.
Yep, exactly. Your next one here, how is positional eligibility determined?
So that question, I think, got a lot clearer, right, with MFL in the offseason, with MFL moving to true position. But, the other thing to think about on Fantrax is there are leagues, and I am in some leagues where positional eligibility is determined by what the official roster says for the team. And then other leagues, whatever Fantrax says goes, right? And so you kind of need to know that so you know what to expect when you're drafting a guy, right? Because freaking Fantrax will have guys listed at cornerback, linebacker, and defensive end, like Jordan Strachan for South Carolina. You could play that dude anywhere on the defensive side, but if you go to South Carolina's official roster, he's going to be listed as a defensive end. So you kind of need to know, what your league does in those situations.
Yeah, and you see a lot more of that on college side, the multiple position designations, than you do on the NFL side.
I think you see it in sleeper, right, on the NFL side. But
yeah, you see it some.
But MFL kind of took a big step forward to kind of fix this issue this offseason by moving to true position. So basically now
last year was
defensive ends.
Last year was a little bit of a mess, right? So if you didn't have whatever his name, at Sticky, whatever it is, Adam
Sticky Z's true position tool.
Yeah, if you didn't have that, then if you were a commish, you either had to kind of leave it as whatever MFL had it set at, or you were doing a lot of work, right? So
right, and then they moved guys like Joey Bosa and Josh Allen moved from defensive end to linebacker, and that just kills their value, right? Because you ain't really starting those guys at linebacker,
right? And that's so tough. So, and I can see the proponent for both, because I hear a lot of people say, "Well, I wish they just do away with the defensive end and outside linebacker thing and just make them." Because if you're an outside linebacker, you're getting put as a linebacker. So let's just make it an edge. And I don't.
Well, but that's essentially that's what MFL did, right? So they moved all the outside linebackers to defensive end. They didn't create a new position called edge, but that they accomplished the same goal.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Just a different way. I mean, there's different ways that these leagues run. So.
The other thing I want to mention before we move on from positional eligibility is talking about Fantrax is, again, Jordan Strachan, right? You can find what we'll call cheat code players.
Yes.
Travis Hunter. I don't know if he's going to get wide receiver eligibility in Fantrax or not. My guess is he'll probably have dual wide receiver cornerback eligibility. Well, that's a cheat code, right? Now, he's not a great example of a cheat code because you're going to pay a heavy price to get Travis Hunter in an IDP league. But the point being is there are other players like that where they have multiple position eligibility. Maybe DeMarvion Overshown is probably a better example. He had defensive back or cornerback and safety eligibility, but he really played linebacker. When you say, well, how the heck does that happen? Well, when he came to college, that's what he was. He was a safety, and so it's kind of, and then he grew into a linebacker, and Fantrax never updated him strictly to linebacker. So knowing
Same
that
with Amari Burney from Florida that I had on a couple of rosters. Same thing, right? He played safety.
Anthony Orji was another one.
Yep. And then they're actually playing linebacker, but you can play them as a safety or whoever.
Back.
And
so that's
that's a huge cheat code.
Huge cheat code.
Yeah.
And we should probably not use the word cheat. You use the word cheat, right? Because it's not really you're not cheating. It's allowed.
No.
It's a Konami code. Konami code, right? That's a better way to say it. Konami code.
Right.
Up, down, left, right.
Back, BA.
Yeah. Yep.
Boy, we just dated ourselves. There's some kids out there who are like, what in the hell are these two clowns talking about? So you've got two more here. Strategies. And the first one is strategy for an auction draft. And then you've got strategy for conventional draft, like your regular serpentine drafts or whatever. I'll let you go what direction you want to go here.
So, and maybe these don't need to be separate. I just listed them separate in case they do.
Well, I kind of think maybe there's differences in them, right? So I think maybe you can list them different, but I get what you're saying.
So, like, I can tell you my personal strategy, right, is I'm not gonna spend high draft capital, and I'm not gonna spend a lot of money on defensive players. But because of my knowledge, that affords me the ability to do that, right? And so not everyone is in that same predicament. You're not spending hours a day, watching film, researching players, all that kind of good stuff. So
right.
I think you need to understand how you need to be comfortable with your own knowledge and allow that to dictate your strategy.
Right, because I feel like I'm the same as you, but I'm kind of different in a way. Like,
oh yeah, me, you, and Chopper all different.
I spent a whole lot, like I said, on Corey Foreman that year because I didn't know. I was trying to learn. Plus, I was using it for my fantasy writing or whatever. But I don't spend a whole lot now, knowing what I know in the short time that I've learned. But at the same time, I don't feel, for me personally, I don't feel as confident in myself on offensive players in Devy as you do. So I feel like I'm pretty good on defense, right? I know who the guys are or projected guys are, and I know what I need. So I feel like I can kind of make it up a little bit on the defensive side. So I'm probably willing to pay a little more for IDP players than you are, right?
Yeah.
We both may love Caleb Downs, but I'll give 100 where maybe you would only give 50 for that player. But that's because I feel more confident and comfortable in what I know I can get out of him. Where on the offensive side, I'm just not as adverse at that same way. And so I think we're similar, but I think it's just kind of flipped a little bit.
Yeah. I generally, you're right. Absolutely right. I spend more on offense than you do. But the other thing, like I feel like, and I'm not afraid to spend up on defensive players. Like I mentioned earlier, I spent, I think it was like $85 or something on Chop Robinson, right? But I fully expect Chop Robinson as a first round draft pick in next year's NFL draft, so I don't have a problem spending $85. I just feel like, for defensive guys, I just feel like it's really, really hard to project that draft capital, right? I mean, and then you talk about Caleb Downs, especially for a defensive back, man. Like, even if I was confident that Caleb Downs was going to be a first round draft pick, I still couldn't spend that kind of money on him just because like there's so many defensive backs available and around, you know.
Yeah,
like if I'm gonna spend up on a guy, it's gonna be an elite edge, right? A Will Anderson type edge,
right.
or a a linebacker that I feels like super confident now. Harold Perkins, right? If I had to pick a linebacker in this class, it'd be Anthony Hill, right? Those type of players.
Right, and I feel like I'm kind of the same. It's like we're saying the same thing, but we're on the opposite sides, right? You're not afraid to spend up for defense, but I'm not afraid to spend up for offense, right? One of Chop's leagues, the Campus to Canton league that we're in, right? I was hurting at quarterback, and I spent, $711 on Nico, and then I turned around and got Arch Manning for $752, and that was 2/3 of my bankroll I think I had.
I think the difference between us is you guys you feel confident in, you will spend up in. Whereas me, I know so many, I know such a wide spectrum of players, I have a hard time spending up on anybody because I'll just move to the next guy.
Right, but I feel like you're more, when me and you are talking like right now, I feel like you're more, and maybe this is wrong, I feel like you're geared more offensively a little bit than you are defense.
Absolutely.
But I think at the same time, you're one of the best IDP minds, especially in Devy, that there is, right? I could talk to you and Chop all day long about defense. So, and I don't feel that you guys are lagging or missing anything on defense. It's just, and most people, well, I won't say most people, but a lot of people, if wherever they're comfortable at, that's where they tend to lean and spend more, kind of like myself, right? As I said, I feel more comfortable with defense, so that's kind of where I'm, like you said, you feel confident in Peter Woods or Caleb Downs or whoever, you're going to attack and spend a little more than you would.
So yeah, like it's focusing like on an auction draft, right? Your top IDP guys, and I'm talking from a supplemental perspective because I've never done a startup auction on the college side. All the leagues that I'm in now, I took over orphan teams, so I really haven't. And maybe you can. I don't know if you were in any auctions when they started Hollywood, but from a supplemental or freshman or free agent standpoint, the top guys are going like, I want to say 150, sometimes maybe even 200, right?
Right.
In that range, I'd say $100 to $150 is kind of what I would expect the normal range, right? For the top end talent.
I haven't done a startup with an auction. I've done a startup, regular, but draft wise. But
yes, me too.
Not really a startup. So, I was talking about Nico and Arch, where I spent basically $1,500, 2/3 of my bankroll, but at the same time, I got Peter Woods in that auction, and I spent 71. So, but in Chop's other league, Peter Woods went almost $100. So I feel like I got a deal here, right? I think I got him at a cheap, quote unquote value there as compared to some of the other prices I've seen him at. So
if you're in a freshman and supplemental auction this year, who's the one? If you could pick one freshman, and you would say, hey, this guy I feel confident in being a high-end NFL talent, who would that be? And you're going to spend, let's say, $150 on him.
I'm going to say Caleb Downs, but I know in the back of my mind, linebacker scores the most fantasy points, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think he's just so special. Same with Peter Woods. I think I would have him second, but in the back of my mind, that's only a specific position type play.
It's a defensive tackle league.
Right.
Yeah,
So
Anthony Hill would be the one, right? If I'm giving advice to somebody, I'm gonna say that's who I'd
yeah,
spend up on.
I'll tell you one that looking down the road, and this is this is so hard. Um, Sal will appreciate this because he's the one that does the shit to me. So, but looking ahead, like 2020. Let's see here. I'm trying to find out. I'm pretty sure he's 2024 class. Um, Sammy Brown, right? The linebacker.
Yeah.
If I'm in that incoming class for that year, whew, man, I hate to say this, but I'm probably going to bid a lot on him because from early indications are he's the real deal, right? I mean, he's got everybody and their mama looking at him. Yeah, and he's in the 2024 class. So just a quick look here, the top 5, and I'm looking at 247. You got Dylan Raiola, quarterback, naturally. Then you've got Jeremiah Smith at 2, the wide receiver for Ohio State. Then you've got Williams Nawarney, which hope Tennessee can get, defensive lineman, probably going to be an edge. Then you've got a corner at 4, Ellis Robinson, going to Georgia, and then you got Sammy Brown. He is 5th on their list. I like Nwarney, I like Robinson, but I'm not bidding nowhere near on them what would probably bid on Brown because I think Brown plays a premium position.
Has Brown committed anywhere yet?
No. Actually, I read something on that. He's probably not going to commit or verbally commit or whatever, probably till around November or so. I think he's still got some visits left. Same thing with Nwarney. I know a lot of people think it's Oklahoma, Tennessee for him. Texas A&M sticking their nose in the way a little bit, but I think it's the same with him. Late October, early November, because I think some of these kids still have some visits. They may know, but they just want to take their visits, make sure. So, man, I dread the 2024 class because I just have a feeling to get Brown, man, you're going to have to pay up, right?
You know, and here's another thinking of an auction strategy, right? Let's say you want Anthony Hill. Well,
okay.
I don't know that it's a kind of a catch-22 to me, but you know, when that auction just opens, right, and you got that name, you got, you know, your Arch Mannings and your Malachi Nelsons and, you know, the Cedric Baxters and all these guys on that list, right? I'm thinking that might not be a bad idea to throw Anthony Hill at that point, right? Because people are bidding hot, and it's a catch-22, right? People have all their money, so that's the bad part. But the positive part is they're focusing on these offensive guys that are going for a lot of money.
Yes.
And so maybe you could sneak an Anthony Hill or someone through at that point. You know, I don't know.
I do that, to be honest with you. That is, thanks for blowing my cover, my whole ruse here.
I mean, the other option is to wait, you know, until everyone's out of money, right? But
right, which a lot of times when everyone else is out of money, I am too, right? So I'm kind of screwed.
Right? Well, and then here's the other thing, right? Is you get caught there too, because there's going to be one or two teams that isn't out of money, and they got lots of roster spots, so they're going to overpay, you know, because a lot of the talent's already gone, and so it's
it's a balancing act, and
you have to know your league and your league mates, and you got to learn their tendencies.
And I don't always do that, but I have done that. When when owners are bidding on offensive players, right? Nico and Arch and all these guys, all these top offensive weapons. And I'm thinking right out the gate, because if you watch early in them auctions, as soon as those names hit the board, everybody and their mama's bidding on them, right? Justice is bidding 50 and Chop will bid 75, and I come in with 100, and Austin from Campus to Canton comes in, screw you, 150, and you've got this early bidding war, and I'm like, I already know this is going to get ugly, right? With these guys, the price is going up. Let me slide Anthony Hill in here at 5 and see where it goes.
Right, or maybe not even Anthony Hill. Maybe like, I don't know, the number 5 rated linebacker, someone a little less known, right? Where
right.
you know where they may sneak even more so under the radar, so to speak.
Yeah. So I do that from time to time. Especially if I feel like I'm kind of tight on money, I'll kind of slip those. Especially if I'm seeing like, I don't know, 95% of the first bids are offense. I'll go ahead and slide that defense in there. And maybe I don't get him, right? Maybe everybody's kind of hip to it and wise and they bid it up. But once he gets out of my price range, I'll tend to let him go a little bit and maybe slide another one in there and see where he goes and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
I hate telling all my secrets.
Well, you kind of have to feel your way through it. I mean, that's just what you have to do.
Right. And I'll tell you, sometimes you kind of alluded to it, and I thought maybe that might be where you were going. But maybe some of these top, Caleb Downs and Peter Woods and Anthony Hill, maybe they come off, right? And I'll bid on them and kind of get a feel. Because you can kind of tell, especially if you know your league mates, you kind of tell. Maybe I'll drop down to like the 6th or 7th. At the position, even 10th or 11th, and slide one of them in there, because the more those guys are gone that I don't get, leaves me a little bit more ammo for some of those 3rd, 4th guys, 5th, 6th guys that maybe I do want. It's so funny to sit back and watch the whole auction thing, how it plays out. I think it's interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, just when you think like a league and what's going to happen, right? Like it just like goes bonkers. Like I'll tell you, like that Legends League, like the auction this year was like not even close to last year, right? As far as like just anything. I thought this year like everything was way higher, even to the very end, right? Like you weren't sneaking anybody through at $1. I mean,
no.
Did it happen? Maybe, but it didn't happen nearly as much as I think it happened last year. And so,
right, and it wasn't.
You just don't know.
And it wasn't any well-known players really. If you got anybody for $1, not. You're looking way down the depth charts. Just way down. But I wonder now that
I felt like Legends overall. Like all the prices were high, even at the very end, guys were going super high.
Yeah, I kind of wonder because I feel like I can't see it because I'm involved in it. But I was listening to you talk like you kind of got a feel for how I bid and what I'll do. You've played long enough with me in these leagues, right? So I have to imagine. Like Legends. We'll go back to Legends. I have to imagine that for me to bid 700 plus on 2 quarterbacks right out the gate, and it was clear I wasn't giving up on either one of them because I had a need. I had to get one of them, but for me to be that aggressive on 2 quarterbacks, did that throw you off kilter? Were you thinking, okay, he's bidding on 2, but he's going to settle on 1? Did you think I was really going to push for both, or?
No, well, yeah, I did. I did think you would. But no, I didn't say like it threw me off. It like, I mean, what it said to me is, hey, he clearly thinks he needs to address quarterback in this draft, and he's going and doing it. And to be honest with you, I think it was a smart move from the standpoint that this quarterback class was deep, right? And so, it wasn't like last year where you had Quinn Ewers and then some other guys. And And to be honest with you, I expect next year is going to be the same way as with Quinn Ewers. You're going to have Dylan Raiola and then all these other guys. And so this quarterback class was super deep. And so I think, this was the year to do what you did.
Yeah, and it worked out. So I think I had
in hindsight, I think it was Campus to Canton. I think I spent like $1,000 on Ewers. In hindsight, that was dumb, right? I probably could have spent $1,200 and got, I don't know what they went for, but maybe I got Moore and Nelson for 12. You know what I'm saying? So, I should have waited.
So we're talking about legends here a little bit, and I pulled up my entire auction class, and I didn't really realize it, but it's so weird for me, right? So the first auction,
there's no defensive guys.
There's two. So I got
that is weird for you because you usually walk away with quite a haul on defense.
Yeah. So this is legends. I got Roderick Robinson, the running back from Georgia, for $199. I got Richard Young, the running back from Bama, $256. Then I got Arch Manning for $601. Then I got Ethan Davis, the tight end for Tennessee, at $30. And then the last two that I got was Jaleel Mitchell for $1, the safety at Alabama, and Jack Kaiser, linebacker for Notre Dame, at $13. That was it. That was the only two I had. Now I'm going over to Campus to Canton to see if it was the same. Pretty sure it wasn't. But it was top heavy offense too. I mean, it was the same. It was the same principle because this is the league that I had to have quarterbacks in. So in this one, for me, it went a little different. Nico 711. Then I got Peter Woods at 71. Then I got Arch Manning at 752. Then I got Samuel and Pimba, the edge for Georgia, at 37. That was my first four. And then it fell off from there. It was and it not only fell off tier-wise, but it fell off price-wise too. So Khalifa Keith, a running back for Tennessee, I got him for $8. Ramon Harrison, Tennessee linebacker, $1. Right? So you're already seeing my Tennessee, because in this league I had already spent $1,600 with the two quarterbacks and Woods, so I kind of limited here. Ramel Keaton for $12. Deontay Craig, we talked about on the dude's list. I got him for $1, right? My next big one was Thomas Yasmin, because I really needed a tight end, and this is the guy for Utah taking over for Kincaid and the other guy. I spent
Cookie's still there, but yeah.
Yeah, so I spent 61 on Yasmin. Other than that, it was a lot of late dart throws. Now, the one that I will say, the one that I do like, probably my favorite, is VJ Payne, the safety from Kansas State. He was a freshman last year, going to be a sophomore this year, and I only paid $1 for him. So you can find values. If you know what you're looking for, you can get cheap values. But, yeah, even in this league, I really didn't go very heavy defense. So
I think I spent the majority of my money got spent on two wide receivers. I think Zachariah Branch and Jonte Cook.
Let's see.
I'm pretty sure I spent like $600 a piece on them two guys. And then Chop Robinson was my highest defensive guy. Like I want to say like 84, something like that.
Campus to Canton. Let's see. You had.
Well, no, this is Legends.
Oh, Legends. Okay. Yeah, in Campus to Canton, you didn't do too bad.
I didn't spend a whole lot in Campus. I think Brandon Ennis was probably the highest guy, right? Like
$386.
Yeah, $400. So, but Legends, pretty sure I spent almost $1,200 between two wide receivers. So. Yeah,
your most expensive defensive player was
Chop Robinson in Legends.
Yeah, but in Campus to Canton, let me look.
I only won one defensive player, Ben
Yeah.
Cooter.
Ben Cooter, yeah, $7
Like
a linebacker for Iowa.
Yeah, $7.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, when
I bid on Downs and I bid on other guys, right? But after
I did too, but I felt like after
$40, I was out.
See, you're out at 40. I was kind of
40, 50.
eyeballing maybe. Yeah. See, me, I was kind of eyeballing that 75 to 80 range, and once he got past that, I kind of backed off because I felt the value wasn't there. Right? At that point, I kind of felt like, hey,
not for Downs, right? Yeah, I mean, like,
right.
what I'm willing to spend on a defensive player varies by the player, right? I mean,
right.
But yeah,
and I think
Downs,
it varies by your needs too. I think, getting back to some of your questions.
Right, another league, maybe I'm willing to spend more on Downs because I need defensive backs.
Right. Yep. It's very interesting. I was trying to see what Chalk did here with his Nebraska Cornhuskers. I don't think in Campus to Canton he got too crazy either on defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, he did. He won a whole mess of linebackers. He did, and the funny thing is, I bet you he's got freaking 15 linebackers on his roster now. Yeah, he went.
No, it must be Legends that he done that, because in Campus to Canton he only has, on the auctions that he won Samuel Amasasigo from Oklahoma, linebacker, and he won.
Or maybe he already had. He might have already had a bunch of linebackers on his roster.
Yeah, he may have had a bunch, but he only won 2 in the auction. In this league, anyway. Any other strategies that maybe that you don't use or that you know of that people use that you like, you dislike? I mean, I'm sure there's variation.
I would say there's other strategies they really have nothing to do with IDP.
Right. Well, one that I heard the other day was, I was on, if you follow them, Fantasy 40 with John DeBari and Walk. I was on there talking rookies the other day, and he was asking me about corners and stuff. And we were talking, and John's like, well, I'll be honest. He said, I want to run something by you. And I was like, okay. And he said, this is something that I've done the past couple of years, and he said, so far it's not bitten me. It's turned out okay. I've done fairly well. So he plays like position specific. So you have to start corners.
Okay.
And he says at the end of every year, after everything's settled and we've declared champions, everything, and the leagues roll over and you start, he cuts every single corner on his roster. Every one of them. He just cleans house. And he goes in after like free agency and some of these rookie drafts. He says at the end, I'll start picking up rookie corners and stuff like that. And he said the last 2 years, he's not done too bad. And with how people screen corners,
it depends on the league.
True, very true.
I mean, like in our leagues that require corners, you better not do that because those dudes ain't gonna be those dudes. Yeah, there's not a lot on waivers.
Yeah, so
I mean,
I thought that was
if you're gonna do something like that, you need to know your league, right? Like, is it a 12-team league? DWC is what was DWC 12 teams, but it's defensive only, and then even the listener league, the Devy IDP grind listener league, there's 16 teams, and we require corners. And can you stream corners? Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, like, there's not a ton of like great streaming options available on the waiver wire. So yeah, I like in those kind of leagues, you better not do that kind of strategy, or you're really kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
But I can see in some leagues, certainly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because I'd never thought of doing that. And he's like, because I asked him, he's like, he said, so far, knock on wood, it hadn't bit him. He's like, I've cut I just go in and cut every corner I have and pick them up off of waivers. And
I've never done it with
Bad
like
theory.
a position like that, but I'm not in any leagues now that require it. But when I was in leagues that required team defenses or kickers, I absolutely did.
Yeah.
I absolutely, and people will keep them, right? I wouldn't. Even if I
Yeah.
owned Alabama, I was cutting them, right?
Right?
Whoever just there wasn't enough variance between the number 1 defense or number 1 kicker and the number 20 guys. So I wasn't gonna, when I had to make cuts, I'd rather save that roster spot for a receiver or a quarterback than a kicker or a defense. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I can certainly see where that's a plausible strategy and with cornerbacks in certain leagues. But in some, again, goes back to knowing your leagues.
Yeah, for sure. You gotta know that scoring. You gotta know your roster spots. Is it position specific? Is it basic? I mean, all that comes into play. So for sure.
You want to move on to like, I guess, conventional draft.
Yeah, we can do that
from the auction standpoint. So, a question I think I get asked a lot is, in a traditional draft, when do you kind of target IDP? And I will tell you, like, I think in a startup draft, they're going probably around 7-ish, right? 6 to 8, somewhere in there. Your elite guys are going, and then it feels like most teams are in by around 10 or so. In a supplemental draft, I mean, we've seen guys go as high as the 2nd round. I mean, I think that's a little bit rich, but if you want like an Anthony Hill, for instance, like I'm pretty sure Harold Perkins went in the like the 2.2 or something, 2.3 of our draft of our draft last year. So, those kind of high end IDP guys, rookies or freshmen, are going to go, 2nd and 3rd round.
Yeah, I would think a player like Caleb Downs is going to go really early, right?
Yeah.
If you want him, and you're going to have to. You hear the same term, overpay, right? But it applies to both auctions and drafts, because either you're going to have to spend more money than you should or need to, or you're going to have to use a higher draft pick than you're going to have to reach basically to get him.
Well, and here's another thing. This strategy would apply to either kind of league. Is like, do you have league mates that literally just kind of like rely on 24/7 rankings or on 3 rankings, right?
True.
And so, if you're able to find a guy that you like that's not super high ranked, well, chances are that other people aren't going to know about him, and so you're going to be able to get him cheaper.
Yeah, I agree. And
especially with defense, right? Especially with defense, because other than your rankings, like there isn't a whole lot out there, and so what are people using? They're probably using 24/7 or on 3 or whatever.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not using at Boomer his rankings.
Oh, absolutely not. Those are bad. Those are terrible. Those are terrible. Like the problem is they're not good for production, and they're not good for NFL potential. So it's like it'd be different if they were slanted one way or the other, right? At least you're getting some value out of that.
Yeah,
there's no rhyme or reason to his list.
Yeah, it's insane. But so I know for a fact that you like conventional drafts better than auctions. You're not an auction guy.
Yeah, I hate auctions with a passion.
I'll say this. I'm with you on the conventional draft, right? Team 1 picks what player they want, team B, so on and so on. The one thing I do like about an auction is
everyone has the same opportunity.
Yes, you have that same opportunity. Now, once you start spending money and your bankroll comes
you control your own. You're more in control of your own destiny,
right? But I do like the regular drafts, the serpentine, the wild card, because hey, maybe you pick right in front of me, 2 spots in front of me, and I've got a player that I'm wanting, and you come in and snipe him, right? It changes. It's a whole different strategy because I think in conventional drafts, your own personal draft board comes in to more play than in auctions.
Oh yeah, than an auction.
Because
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
because then you're really okay. I'm weak at you're weak at safety, and I like these 3 safeties, and I know where I want to take them. But if maybe you've got one in the first round and one in the third and one in the fourth. Okay, I didn't get the one in the first. Somebody sniped me, so I'll just drop down to these next 2. Well, what if you get sniped on both of them? Then you're really changing your draft board, right? Are you switching to another position? Or I think for conventional drafts, your draft boards come more into play. Where I think in auctions, it's kind of a Wild West shootout to begin, and then it kind of.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think for a conventional draft probably requires more homework, right? Because number one, and a big reason why I don't like auctions is, I hate to say it this way, but I don't know any other way to say it. I feel like they reward the lazy, right? So Hollywood can throw out his super sleeper name and ain't nobody heard of him, but you better believe they know how to use Google, right? And so, whereas in a conventional draft, you might have got that guy in the last round of the draft, but you threw his name out in an auction. Everybody done Googled him, figured out who the hell he is, and now you're spending $100 on the guy. And so that's one of the things that I dislike about auction drafts. Like in general, I feel like auction drafts cause a lot of hate and cause a lot of unnecessary hate and discontent in leagues, right? People take it personal, and myself included, right? You take it personal. When let's say it's a 12-hour clock and someone outbids you with 15 minutes to go, you get worked up and pissed off. It happens to me, happens to all of us, right? And so,
I'm gonna touch a nerve here with you. You just mentioned it.
Well,
I'm good.
I know what you're gonna say.
Well, these clocks.
There's a reason for a clock, and I get that.
There is. But I almost feel like this. How do I want to say this? This clock in auctions, right? I almost feel like it's an unwritten rule type thing. Oh, once it gets below an hour, it's an unwritten rule. You don't bid on that. Well,
I don't subscribe to that theory. But what I do subscribe to is if you see the same owner or the same person consistently doing that, right? That bugs me.
Right.
When it happens every now and then, yeah, stuff happens. We all have lives. We got other things to do. Totally get it. Whatever. What really bugs me is when it's the same person over and over doing it.
Well, the reason I mentioned this
because then to me it seems like it's a conscious effort to do that, and then to me you're just being an asshole. So.
Right. I agree with you on that. But the reason I mentioned it is because I've heard in auctions, even NFL auctions, right? And you bid on a player under an hour. I don't care if it's 58 minutes and you bid on them. I have seen fantasy owners just come unglued because you bid on him because it was under an hour. Dude, I don't give a shit. If I log in and there's 2 minutes and there's a player that I want, I'm bidding.
Well, here's the thing, right? And it happens to me too, right? So let's say it's a 12-hour auction. So you're sitting here watching this thing for 11 hours, and you got this guy at $1, right? And you're super pumped, and you're you know what I mean? Like you're living on this high, and all of a sudden some asshole comes in at 15 minutes or whatever, and bids you up. Like now, like what I'm saying, like it's you go from one extreme to the other. And
honestly, I don't.
That happens to all of us.
Yeah, it does. It happens to me too. And I don't try to purposely do that, right?
Yeah, and I don't think you do either. But I can tell you, there's been cases where you'd be hard pressed not to convince me that there are people that don't do that, because I just seen them do it too many times, right?
Right. Yeah, the scavengers, as they will.
So, like, if you were to ask me, like, what would be my perfect option for a draft for freshman supplemental type drafts, it would be a hybrid. And I did float this idea out the chop, but he didn't really seem too interested in it.
I think he's more of an auction guy.
Yeah, I think maybe if he starts a new league, maybe he'll consider it. But so here's what I think is the perfect option. So each owner in the league gets to nominate X number of players. Whatever X number is, it is what it is. 2 players or 5. For the sake of argument, let's say, every owner gets to nominate 5 players, right? So if you're in a 12-team league, that's 60 players that'll be auctioned. You don't allow any repeats. It's kind of first come, first serve to put your 5 players' names on the list. And then those 60 players in this example would be the only players that you will auction. Once the auction is done with those 60 players, then you move to a conventional draft. And so, to prevent people from just – because what's going to happen in that scenario if you don't have any kind of rules is the guy with the 1.1 pick, he's going to give you 5 total shit names, right? And the guy with the 1.12 pick is going to pick the top 5 players.
Right.
So to kind of prevent that 1.1 guy from just kind of throwing out 5 totally bogus names, you implement some kind of rule where, hey, whoever you nominate, if they don't get bid at X number, I don't know, say $20, well then you're going to spend $20 on. You're stuck with them for $20.
Yeah, you've got to have some kind of rule.
You would have to do that, and so I think what that does, right, is it kind of gives people the opportunity to win those elite talents, right? Now, another way to do it too would be the commissioner decide, right? And maybe he goes and picks the top 10 of every position at 24/7, right? The top 10 rated guys. And those are going to be the guys you're going to auction, right? But what it does is it kind of gives everyone that opportunity to kind of get the top end talent. And then you're not going to you don't have to throw your sleeper out there and spend $100 on them that no one knows about, because and in this case you're going to save him for the actual draft and you're going to draft him, right? And so he's going to be yours. People don't get the opportunity to go spend 12 hours on Google or whatever researching the guy.
Good point. And I think one quick thing that difference between auction and conventional auction, I feel like there's a greater reach, right? In other words, if you're bidding on downs, I think you can overspend more in a draft than maybe what it would cost you in a conventional draft, in an auction.
I don't know. I disagree. I think you spend more in an auction because you got multiple people driving up a price, right?
That's what I'm saying. In an auction, everybody
going to
spend
more.
Yeah. Where I think in a draft, somebody may overspend and take him in the first round, right? Late first round, 112. Right. But that's not really – that's a reach, but it's not a reach of spending $150 in an auction. I think that is a bigger reach than the draft capital, I think. Just kind of my opinion.
No, I agree with you, right? Because if you're someone that wants Caleb Downs, you're probably thinking, well, I'm going to spend the second round on him. And so, so maybe somebody trumps you at the end of the first round versus, an auction where you're going to spend, like you said, $150 on them versus, what you would expect to spend is half, like you said, 75 or whatever, Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of conventional drafts.
Yeah.
although I think if and that's if you're telling me I have to choose between an auction or a conventional draft. Personally, I think that hybrid approach is like the best of both worlds, and so that would be my.
Interesting. I have never really heard that, but that is an interesting.
No, I've never, and to my knowledge, I don't know any leagues that ever have done it. Like that was so. Last year was kind of the first time I've done an auction draft, probably in 30 years, right? And the last time I did an auction draft was with my friends in an NFL auction. And so last year was kind of my introduction to C2C auctions, and I remember after that Campus to Canton auction last March, or I guess April,
Yeah.
I was so distraught and like just defeated that, you know, the next auction, Legends, I just didn't really give a crap. I didn't really care because, yeah, I was just over it. And so I had a lot of money to spend this year. Hence, I was able to spend, you know, $1,200 on 2 wide receivers because I just didn't spend it. I was just so frustrated and pissed off and angry, and I just kind of punted.
Right. It happens. Anything that we've missed, do you think?
Not that I can think of. I mean,
I think we covered pretty much
we
everything.
spent almost an hour and a half, you know, and most of that was talking about draft strategy. So
Yeah. Not sure what we're going to talk about next week unless you have an idea.
I don't off the top of my head right now.
I don't either. I was sitting here trying to think real quick.
And maybe it won't be next week, right? Maybe it'll be in a few weeks. But while we're talking about draft strategy, I got to tell you, if you're in an IDP league, we'll probably be starting our conference preview series, right? We'll be starting that probably sometime in June. We need to kind of like look at the calendar and back calculate how far back we need to start, but we'll get that figured out here in the next week or so. But you definitely want to listen to those, because if you want to hear a bunch,
you put that together last year, that was helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we talked about Jason Henderson, we talked about Danny Stutzman, talked about Mason Cobb, some other guys. I know we talked about other guys that like no one had no clue who they were, and we talked about them on those shows.
I even found myself using that as a tool throughout the season. You know, like waivers and stuff. I'd go back and I'd catch myself going back and kind of looking at it and saying, okay, who's this guy? Does somebody already own him or have him on their roster? So, I mean, it's a pretty neat little. I think stuff like that, tools like that, are so interesting to me. Right? Like everybody, well, I don't know. I won't say everybody knows, but they probably will now. I hate trade calculators. I hate them. I despise them. I despise them because I don't feel like they give what.
Well, you cannot put there is no trade calculator exists that allows you to put enough information about your league specifics to kind of give you a true value,
but even
right?
If it did,
they're kind of they just have to be so generic that because they just have to, right?
Well, even if they're generic, or even if you put all the information you wanted to in, they don't take in account of the human element. Like, and I had this argument years ago with a owner or a commish, and he ran his league, and he had a weird trade thing set up, and everybody hated it, and we were trying to figure out. You know, he opened it up for discussion. Well, what can we do to do this? To make it better. And one of his ideas was maybe break players down into tiers, right? And this is back when Manning and Brady's throwing 50 touchdowns a year and all this stuff. And for the most part, he was on track, but I couldn't get him to realize that, hey, maybe Justice has Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and I don't know, Matt Ryan. And he's trying to trade Matt Ryan to me. So to me, maybe
I need a running back or a receiver, right?
Right. And maybe I need that quarterback because I have somebody that's hurt, and I have a rookie that's not seen the field yet, and I'm struggling to put together a lineup. And I was like, that Matt Ryan to me is going to be worth a whole lot more than Matt Ryan is. Yes, and I couldn't get him to understand that, and I said it goes the other way too. I said if whatever you're trying to trade for Matt Ryan or trade Matt Ryan for, maybe it's not as there's the human element in trading has to be there, because a trade calculator, they don't really understand your needs of your team, right? Or they don't understand some of the other stuff, and I just couldn't get him to understand that. And I was like, ew. But yeah, we'll try to come up with a topic for next week. If you have any ideas, shoot them over to us. We'd be glad to check them out. Maybe we'll do some player breakdowns. I know we did that last year a little bit, looking at some high school tape. Maybe we'll pick a player profile to kind of do here and there before we get your conference breakdown.
Preview.
Yeah. I think that's about it. I think we've covered everything unless you've got something else.
Yep, that's it, man.
Well, with that, please go listen, or don't go listen. Please go rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That's what I was trying to say. Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Podbean.
Same thing on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the page.
Yep. The more you like, the more you share, the more you spread the news, it helps us grow. It's just how that works. And it helps on the podcast too. Apple Podcast, the more likes it gets and everything, the more it goes up. So it just helps us get out there and reach a broader audience and allows us to do a few more things. So go check us out there. You can find Justice at Justice_2318. You can find me at Hollywood Titan. You can find us both at Devy IDP Grind. Go to Campus to Canton and follow Justice, all his good stuff over there. You can follow me on idpnation.com. And if you're looking for Devy, Patreon is where you want to go. So go check that out. Doing a lot of stuff there. And we'll be back maybe next week or in 2 weeks. We'll see what kind of news and stuff we got going on. But until then, shoot us all your questions, trades. Me and Justice is always glad to help with anything fantasy. So
yep, absolutely.
Let us know. And we'll be back next week.